Hi, Kevin Coop here, and this is FaceTime with the Content Guy. I spend an awful lot of time reading about companies that are using the internet and social media to find new ways to reach out and connect with consumers. And sometimes it's nice just to get a little surprise when I'm able to find ways to connect as a consumer. And let me give you an example. I've mentioned here on Morning Newsbeat from time to time that I am not the handiest guy around. I'm not really a DIY kind of guy. I'm challenged about that kind of stuff. My expertise begins and ends with being able to screw in a light bulb. And there are a couple of recessed fixtures here in the house. I even have trouble with those. I'm just not that kind of guy. Now, I have a friend who used to come over and help me with those kinds of projects. I say help me, I'm using the words liberally. Basically, I'd call him up, I'd have things to do. I'd say, listen, if you could help me out, I got this new beer in, and he'd come over with his tool belt and get things done. It would be great. It was terrific. But this friend of mine moved to Florida, and smarter than I am apparently, because considering how much snow we're having these days. But since he moved to Florida a couple of years ago, quite frankly, things have been sort of falling apart around here because I just didn't know what to do. But recently, I just got frustrated. I realized I've got to do something about this. So what I did is I used Angie's List, a service which I'd read a lot about but had never used before. Bought a membership, and it took me about 2 minutes after being on Angie's List looking for somebody who could help me out, and I found a service called Mr. Handyman. Oh, this was great. So I sent Mr. Handyman an email, and within a couple of hours, I got a phone call, and basically I said, listen, I've got a list of things that need to get done around the house. I'm going to have you come out and do one of them, and if it all works out, that'd be great because then I'll use you for more stuff. Now, the guy I was talking to on the phone said, listen, that's completely understandable. I understand the whole notion of auditioning, but just so you know, we are priced in such a way that it really makes more sense for you economically to make a list. Make a list of the things you'd like us to do, and we'll come out and do them because we charge by the hour, but the fees get lower as the time goes on. Well, it made sense to me, so I put together my list, we set up a time, and at the appointed time, actually a little bit early, a fellow named Jimmy shows up from Mr. Handyman. Well, Jimmy is fabulous. Jimmy goes through the house, and I'm giving him the projects that need to get done. He gets them all done quickly. No stress, no sweat, not a problem. In fact, he even saves me money because one of the carpentry projects I needed done, he said, well, I understand what you're thinking, but I can do this actually in a way that's cheaper, that will use less product, less materials, fewer materials, and it's going to save you money. Well, that sounded good to me. Knocks the whole thing off in about 3 hours. I spent about $300. While it's a little bit more expensive than a six-pack of beer, really the best $300 I could have spent. And this is great, and they have turned me not just from being, a customer to being an advocate, because this whole system worked out really, really well. And I really appreciated the fact that they made my life simple. Now, what was interesting is when I was talking to Jimmy, and let me tell you, I'm going to ask for Jimmy every time because he was great. And he was explaining to me that, Mr. Handyman is in fact a franchise. And the guy who owns it, he's not all that much handier than I am. He was a refugee from the corporate world, but he saw a need for a service like this that could help people like me. He would provide the marketing moxie, if you will, and he could find other people who could actually, provide the expertise. And I think this is brilliant, personally. It speaks a lot to the whole idea that I try to talk about here on Morning Newsbeat, which is it's important to me more than just a source of product. It's really, it takes you so much further if you can also be a resource for expertise for the consumer. And that's exactly what both Mr. Handyman and Angie's List did. Really kind of, not exactly an epiphany on the way to Damascus, but pretty close. And I found it to be enormously helpful. Little things changed my life in terms of the kinds of services that I need and a lot of other people kind of need. And I think that the Angie's List Mr. Handyman lesson can be applied to a lot of other businesses. Anyway, that's what's on my mind this Thursday morning, and as always, I want to hear what's on your mind.